Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit up to $250. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back, all from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, kicking off a pick 4 sequence at Belmont Park on Belmont Stakes Saturday. Race number 4 is the Grade 2 Brooklyn. Older horses going 1.5 miles, one tour around Big Sandy. Before we get to the analysis, go to drf.com/Belmont Stakes. Get that Belmont Stakes winners package. Take advantage of the 25% off the retail price. Benefit from the past performances, exclusive Clocker reports, betting strategies, and the DRF Players Guide. Here's the field for the Brooklyn. This is a very competitive race, Mike, going 1.5 miles, and Tis a Magician, the number 8, is the 7-2 morning line favorite. This horse has speed. He's got a little bit of class, and he can carry his speed a distance of ground.
Yeah, he can. I mean, there are a lot of horses in this race, it feels like, Dan, who the last thing you're going to worry about really is distance with them. So that's a good thing. What is this? 5 horses among the 9 between 4-1 and or 7-2 and 5-1 on the line. I mean, it sort of handicaps that way.
And as we throw up the Timeform US pace projector, we have horses that like to be close to the pace going a long distance of ground. Musical Heart just wired them in the flat out stakes, going 13 furlongs, I believe. Going 11 furlongs, I believe. Tis a Magician, of course, was up close to the pace in the Tokyo City. Moretti can be close and should be fresh off the layoff. And Lone Rock is a horse with really good tactical speed.
Yeah, I like that about Lone Rock. He does have really good tactical speed. And I found it hard to really disagree with this pace projector too much, Dan. I mean, Musical Heart just went up actually a pretty solid pace in that 11 furlong race last time and wired the field. It feels like it's going to be harder for him to get that kind of, early lead in this race with Tis a Magician in here, but we'll see how they decide to ride it.
30-1 on the number 1, You're to Blame. Who would benefit if this pace is very fast? He hasn't won a race in over 2 years, but he is a stayer. He was only beaten a length in the Brooklyn back in 2019. Doesn't win very often and needs some things to go his way.
Right. I mean, he doesn't win races very often. That's a problem for him. And it also even feels like he's probably now as a 7-year-old not quite as good as he once was. So we'll just see if he can maybe rebound a little bit here. It's at least worth pointing out that when he was beaten by Lone Rock 2 starts back, he had a little bit of a trip in that race. I mean, he got caught behind a stopping horse around the final turn there and got shuffled way back. And I thought he actually did well to get back up for second in that spot. The problem is the race before that, he wasn't any good against Lone Rock. And in the race after that, he wasn't any good against Lone Rock.
Number 2, Rise the Guy, 12-1 on the morning line. I think this horse has some sleeper potential. He was always solid on the turf. Perhaps he's found his niche as a long-distance runner on the main track. His most recent start at Churchill Downs, he kind of mid-moved into the race. It was his first start off the layoff, and I think he paid the price against Lone Rock. I think he felt the effects of the layoff. He could be much sharper second time back.
It's exactly how I looked at it, Dan. He wasn't bad on the turf, and he showed in his grass races last year that could go long. He just didn't really win any of those races. He ran fine. They came back to dirt with him at the end of last year. I thought he ran really well winning at 1.5 miles that day. He was part of the pace in that race, doesn't have to be part of the pace in this race. And I thought, I agree with everything that you said about his last race. Off the layoff, making that early run, he went right past Lone Rock on the backstretch of that race to go challenge for. I got a little tired in the stretch. I thought he ran really well.
Campaign had a miserable trip in the Brooklyn in 2019. He only got beat 3/4 of a length. And it looked like he was going to turn out to be one of the top, marathoners on the main track. His lack of early speed and layoffs have conspired against him. He just has no speed whatsoever. Dropped completely off the radar last time out, passed a couple of tired horses. I guess John Sadler's putting the blinkers on to try to get him within hailing distance, but just know he'll be, even with blinkers on, he's going to be last early.
Yeah, he doesn't have any speed at all. Maybe with blinkers on, he won't be, 25 behind. Maybe he'll only be 20 behind. He just doesn't have any speed. I still have a lot of love for this horse, Dan. I was a huge fan of his back in 2019. Like you, I thought he ran great in this race that year. He was eased in that marathon at the end of 2019. And it just feels like after that, maybe he hasn't come back quite as good. I don't know. I still think he ran okay 2 starts back. Man, I want to try to get him in there somewhere. It's just hard to see him win.
Rocketry was flat off the layoff in the flat out. He just fell behind and really didn't do much as Musical Heart wired them on the lead. This is a horse that's been kind of the bane of my handicapping existence. I've always liked him. He always seems to come up close with no cigar, second in this race in 2019, and yet he finally got it done at Keeneland 2 starts back. If you give this horse some pace, and there's a chance he can get pace, he likes Belmont, and he'll be running late.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I can't say I love him in this race, but I agree with all those things. If they go in front of him, you'll see him late running because he does stay all day long. Man, it was kind of encouraging to see him win that race at Keeneland at the end of last year. It felt like maybe he was going to get back in form. He just didn't run well last time. Second off the layoff now. Maybe he'll run better.
Let's watch the flat out. The local prep for the Brooklyn and Musical Heart took no prisoners. This horse was claimed for 62.5 reclaim by Rob Atras, who's just turned him into a solid stakes horse going long. He wants a distance of ground. He is able to carry his speed. We're going to see coming on the outside, Aja Weed. He does not change leads, but Todd Pletcher stretched Aja Weed for the first time in this race, and he was making a run. Maybe he's finally starting to live up to his potential.
Yeah, maybe he is. That's an interesting take. That's kind of how I looked at it too. I mean, ultimately, Dan, I thought this race was really tough from a handicapping perspective, and ultimately, I wanted to lean away from the New York horses. We'll see if I'm right or wrong about that. I have a lot of respect for Musical Heart. I think he's hit the board now in 10 straight dirt races, and he showed last time that he can stretch out. I just think it's a much tougher pace scenario for him in here, and I just want to see him run another race like that flat out back.
When we watched Moretti as a 2-year-old, we were saying distance, 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 maturity, maturity, maturity. Last year at 4, Todd got a chance to stretch him all the way out. He won the flat out. He won this race, the Birdstone at Saratoga, going a daunting mile and 5/8, and he moved early to take over this race. He's going to beat Yor to Blame, who finishes second. He's going to beat Rocketry, who finished third, and he looked pretty good doing it. Now, he hasn't raced since this run, way back on August the 2nd. While Pletcher is great off layoffs, he's going to have Moretti sharp and ready to go 12 furlongs off the layoff.
Right. I mean, I suppose that could be an issue, because it is a mile and a half. Still, the last thing that I worry about with Pletcher is layoffs. It feels like these horses are always ready. Moretti is no superstar, that's for sure. There's nothing flashy about him, but he's actually pretty good. He stays. He can get any kind of a trip in a race. As I mentioned before, I don't love the New York horses in here. This is the New York horse that I'm going to use.
And I believe if you look up Pletcher and Formulator, past 5 years, dirt routers, 6-month layoff or greater, 37% positive ROI. Aja Weed is the other Pletcher. We saw him rally to finish second in the flat out. He is still eligible for a 2-life allowance, but he had potential at 2. Second in the Remsen when trained by Kieran McLaughlin. Todd told me that when he got him, he just needed some time to get this horse fit. He's improved with each and every start, and the last race was an indication that this is probably what he wants to do, longer distance racing.
Yeah, right. And as opposed to a lot of the other horses in here, Dan, he could still have some upside. I mean, he's only a 4-year-old. He only made 1 start as a 3-year-old, that back in February, so he missed a lot of time. So it's not surprising that Pletcher had some work to do when he took over with this horse. And he did run well last time. This horse I was always a fan of as a young horse. He took a step forward with distance last time. I ultimately didn't take him in this race, but I think he's going to run well again.
Usually in the case of these marathoners, the top handicap horses in the country are just too good for them. They stretch all the way out here. They get a little bit of a drop in class. Tis a Magician faced some pretty good handicap horses out in Southern California. He finished second in the San Pasquale, finishing ahead of Idol, who came back to win the big cap. Tis a Magician stretched out, got the class relief in this race. The Tokyo City, going a mile and a half, he was able to prompt a moderate pace, and then he just puts the boots to this field. If he can transfer this form to Belmont, he's going to be a handful for Dick Mandela.
He is, and we'll see if he's able to do that. The one, little sticking point for me, aside from the fact that, listen, he has speed, so does Musical Heart, and maybe they just go a little bit faster in this race. Boy, he looks fine winning this race, Dan. What a terrible field that was that he beat last time. I just feel like he wasn't beating anything. And this Brooklyn actually came up good. I think this is a way tougher race for him. We'll see how he does.
Like Musical Heart, Lone Rock was a reclaim. Robertino Diodoro took this one back for 40,000, stretched him out in distance, and he was just very good going long at Oaklawn and at Churchill. Let's go back to his race 2 starts back. Optional Claimer going 1.5 miles at Oaklawn, and he just wrested control of this race and pours it on in the stretch to win by open lengths. He came back to beat Rise the Guy last time out when Rise the Guy might have moved a bit prematurely. I talked to Diodoro earlier this morning. He loves this post position. He feels that with speed to his inside, with this horse's tactical speed, he can just sort of tuck in behind and work out a trip.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, ultimately, again, because I didn't like the New York horses, I sort of sided with Lone Rock as being the horse that I think is the horse to beat in here. I think he's going to get a good trip in this race. I think he's run well in each of his last 3 starts over this distance. He does 6 trips then, and you can see in that replay we just showed, he finishes at 1.5 miles. The distance is no problem for him.
Top pick time for the Grade 2 Brooklyn. You can go so many different ways in here. I agree with you that Tiz Magician didn't beat anything last time out, but he faced some good competition 2 and 3 starts back. And with his tactical speed, I think he can sit off Musical Heart. I think there's a chance he's in front turning into the stretch. I think Rise the Guy is kind of the sleeper, though, at a price at 12-1, because I still think he's finding himself and he hasn't run his best just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take him. I think he's a great price on the morning line. I want a price in this race because I feel like it's really wide open. And I feel like he could take a step forward. I thought he ran deceptively well last time, and I think he could still improve.
2-9, 3-6 for Mike, 8-7, 5-6 for me. It's a historic race. The Grade 2 Brooklyn Stakes, a lot of tradition here. Good luck.